Where is everyone? Hey.
Avery?
Yes.
How's it going?
It's good.
Joel.
Good. Hey, Joel.
Thanks for helping me out with that.
Oh, yeah.
That build issue. That was really weird. There was something going on with the Xcode path.
Right.
I wanted to look at it, so that was really strange. But
Okay.
I really appreciate the quick.
Yeah, no problem. Is it fixed?
Oh yeah, it's fixed.
All right.
It was just kind of frustrating because everything about my my PC or my desktop build and my laptop were the same, just the OS and software.
Yeah.
And it was just weird that it worked on one and didn't on the other.
Okay. All right.
But it is fixed now. So might be like a
All right. Sounds good. All right. Hey, everyone. Try to sit as forward as you can, because I mean, there's only 8 of us, so let's try to sit as close to the front as we can. Yeah. So we are being filmed. Say hello to SCPD and all the folks out there. I'm not on video yet, right? No? Okay. Yeah, so also, I'd appreciate if you could stay like 2 or 3 minutes after 10:20 so I can say stuff off the record. All right? Okay. So, yeah, just want to first say that before SCPD starts rolling. All right.
How many people are enrolled in the SCPD?
I don't know, actually. I don't know, actually. I honestly don't know.
How big's our crowd, I guess?
Oh, yeah. Also,
so I don't ask 2 demo questions, or is it only 20? Sorry.
I don't want you to know I'm an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
No, don't worry. So,
no,
worry about it.
Just blur out my face.
I don't actually know.
I'm just
How many
kidding.
students?
No,
All right. Anyways, all right. Let's get started. Are you ready to get started? All right. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to section. My name is Avery, and I'll be your section leader this quarter. So a little bit about me. I have been section leading for 6 quarters or so. So, and this is the first time I'm on SCPD. So say hi to the SCPD folks. Yeah. Doesn't matter. All right. So before we get started, I just want to do just some really quick icebreakers. I know at this point you're probably sick of icebreakers. Sort of, no? Anyways, yeah, so for the SCPD folks, we're going to spend like the first 10 minutes just introducing ourselves. So you can feel free to tune back in like 10 or so minutes, all right? All right, so my icebreaker is really, really short, and it is literally this. All right, so icebreaker is basically your name, your academic program or field of study, major, what is your favorite snack, because I usually bring snacks. I wasn't sure about today because we're in a lecture hall, but I usually bring snacks. They're usually from Trader Joe's. Yeah, so tell me what your favorite snack is. Doesn't have to be Trader Joe's. Then tell me like what you do in your free time. And then the last question is a classic. If we were the only surviving section in a zombie apocalypse, what would your role be on the team and why? The reason why I asked this question is because later I will show you the responses of all the previous sections, and you can rate as to how good your section is as a group compared to the previous sections. All right? So your goal is to beat them.
Okay.
All right? So let's get started. Do you want to start with you? Yeah.
All right. My name is Joel Johnson. I'm still undeclared. I'm either do SimSys or MS&E. My favorite snack, it really depends on time of day, I guess, but for Trader Joe's specifically, they have these, like, I don't even know what they're called, but they look like French fries, but they're actually chips, and they're delicious, and they're low sodium, which is great for me, because especially when I'm cutting weight. What do I do in my free time? I'm a competitive Olympic weightlifter, so a lot of time goes into that. If I was the only surviving if I was the only surviving section in a zombie apocalypse, what would my role in the team be and why?
Sorry, to clarify that, it's
our section. What would your role be in our team?
Yeah, what would your role be in their section? Yes.
Okay,
Small typo, yes.
I was in the Marines for 5 years before this, so I guess I'm pretty good with. I don't know. You can extrapolate what I would say, but yeah, I've got some experience with survival.
I think
stuff,
we got it. I don't even need anything. We got it. We got the winner.
So if you had to put that as a one-word noun.
A one-word noun? Oh, geez.
And then summarize all that in one noun. What would that be?
Rick. like from The Walking Dead, that kind of thing. But with less emotional baggage.
Smart.
Rick, parentheses, less emotional baggage.
Okay.
I know that's not one word, but
That's new. Okay. So how do I do that, Rick? Could you just describe what that means?
Not one word. Take
Okay, that's fine. Take as many words as
one
you
word.
want, but
That's too limiting.
choose something
Short
that
sentence.
let's just go with let's just. I don't even know, man. I can't believe I went first here. Somebody feed me an idea.
Man, you would be freaking bodyguard protection, like
Yeah,
scout.
force protection.
Make
Okay.
sure like no one gets close to us, and then
Wait, what is it? Force protection?
Yeah, force protection. That's the
Force.
technical
Okay.
term.
there
Alright.
you go.
And the rule is no changing your answer after.
Okay,
this,
yeah, that's fine.
Let's start with you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jessica. I'm a second year. I'm studying Earth systems with possibly minor in modern languages. Favorite snack? Yeah, also depends on time of day. This is kind of early, so probably something light like fruit.
Okay.
Yogurt.
All
I
right.
don't know. What do I do in my free time? I enjoy going on hikes and exercising, and also trying to take up embroidery. Interesting. And then zombie apocalypse. Maybe like no idea.
That's okay. Should we come back to you at the end?
Maybe like communications person.
Okay. Awesome.
Like
That's good because
Trying
I
to-
think that was a huge problem in breaking whatever the thing is called, Walking Dead. I didn't watch too much of it, but I feel like there was a lot of bad communication
Okay.
and there was a lot of tension. And we
Okay.
need someone.
No, makes sense.
human resource.
Oh.
Yeah, the HR department. Oh yeah.
So HR. Okay. Hey, obviously in a
Zombie
4-person
apocalypse.
section, we need an HR person, right? All right. Next.
All right. My name is Eric. I am a first-year master's student in mechanical engineering. Favorite snack, no matter when, would be Snickers.
Snickers. Okay.
I'd literally eat that all day, every day,
All right.
if I could. In my free time, I really like sports, so I love playing soccer or football. I'm starting to pick up rock climbing and golf, and I love backpacking, camping, all that stuff. So that was transition into my role on the team. I think I would be like good, like manning the base camp, making sure we got the shelters right, food preparation, clean water, all that, so we don't get sick.
Can't do everything.
But that's like my role. You
Alright.
can
Mm-hmm. If you had a job title, what would it be?
base camp supervisor.
Base camp supervisor. Okay.
I don't know.
So
Actually, that stuff's important.
Yeah, right.
yeah. All right. Supervisor. Yes. Okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah,
Next.
nothing left.
Yeah, hi, my name is Sander. I'm a first year grad in mechanical engineering. My favorite snack is like just any type of cheese platter.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
But-
Okay. Great. I love
He's
cheese
Dutch,
For-
so that's why.
platters. Okay.
For Trader Joe's, maybe like the Trek mix. They have like really good Trek mix from
Okay.
like with chocolate bits and stuff.
Ooh. Alright.
In my free time, I like being outdoor, doing a lot of sports, especially like skiing, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Just like mountaineering.
Cool. All right.
And so, as the only surviving section, I'll actually harvest food. For,
There you go.
All
All
right.
right. So
There we go.
job title harvester.
Yeah, harvest and hunter, I guess.
Okay. So
Like so,
Hunter-gatherer.
hunter gatherer, like
hunter gatherer.
supplies harvester. So you
Okay.
get like all the good stuff. Bring
What
it
word do
in.
you prefer? If you had to choose one.
Hunter gatherer.
Hunter gatherer. Okay.
There you go.
Hunter.
Damn, we got this
We-
on lockdown.
Wait, which one of you two handles like water purification?
That's me.
Oh hell yeah. Okay.
So I'm base camp supervisor. He brings in the water. We purify the. Can I curse on this? We purify it. Very well.
Yeah, I had to catch
And then we
myself
get-
too.
All right. Sounds good. And then You just popped in, yeah. So we're doing icebreakers.
Okay,
Want to start?
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is David. I'm not sure if I'm gonna stay here because I actually signed up for section late, and so my
Uh-huh.
partner and I were in different sections right now. So
Okay.
he might join this section, I might go to his section.
Okay.
But we'll see. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm a freshman, so I'm undeclared, but I'm thinking of either econ or CS major.
All right.
Yeah. Favorite snack? Let's see. So I'm from South Korea, and there's a snack where it's like ramen. It's a snack version, so you don't like cook the noodles. You just break it up and put it in the soup, and it's just like kind of raw ramen, I guess.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
ramen, but it's a snack, but you
It's
still
like
put it
crunchy.
crunchy
ramen,
one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Alright.
My free time, I like to work out, and I'm also in the ultimate team, so I just like throwing frisbee around.
Good.
If I'm the only surviving section, then zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. So there's a little typo. If we were the only surviving section, then what would
Okay.
your role be on our team?
Interesting. Oh.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, it is.
It kind of is.
It is a hard question, especially because you're last. So you
Okay.
have to make sure
What's the
you
other answer?
you have to make sure you round out the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have. What's the first one? Force protection.
Force
Physics
protection,
security.
Okay.
communications HR, base camp
Communication.
supervisor, hunter gatherer.
Hunter gatherer.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I guess I can be the therapist.
Therapist. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright. Interesting choice that you chose therapist rather than medic, but that's fine.
Oh,
Therapist.
shit.
Well,
What about you?
Oh,
Avery?
mental health.
What's,
the mental wounds
Okay,
can
wait,
be
but-
just as deep.
Before I add myself, I want to first show you the other sections, what they wrote. So this is from last quarter, and you can decide if you're better than or worse than them.
DJ, you gotta have a sick playlist when you're going out.
Well, if we had 3 more people, it'd be like, you know. it'd be
Okay,
Supply
okay,
chain
but like,
Supply chain, no. Somebody from the business school out here, huh?
yes, yes. He was a GSB student. So, how would you compare to
Oh, yeah.
these two sections? What do you think?
I think we're lean and we're mean. I think we got that going for us. I think that they're too like bloated in all their roles. Honestly, I think that when you have a planner and a strategist, they're gonna probably split the team in half because they're gonna have like civil strife within the team,
Okay.
and that's gonna cause internal divisions. The
Mhm.
first one, it's good that they have 200 gatherers, but they've got a leader and a diplomat. The diplomat's gonna probably, do something. I don't know. I'm trying to just justify it.
All right, yeah. I distinctly remember the diplomat. What they're in charge is they were going to
Like outreach programs to the zombies.
To the zombies.
so like they were gonna like I don't know, something about deceiving the zombies.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Okay.
Something about that, yeah. All right. Do you think you would survive at least?
Damn right.
Of course.
I think so. I think we got everything we need.
Except for maybe
The medic.
medic.
The medic,
But-
yeah. All right.
What's
But we're
sacrifice?
supposed. But his partner will be medic, right? His partner will be medic.
If he comes here.
If we lose our
say-
therapist, then we still have HR. So
Yeah.
that's
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. Hey, at least you don't have a sacrifice. At least you don't have a.
I didn't even notice sacrifice. Wow.
Yeah. So there's
That's true. That takes him out.
there are oftentimes we get an answer, decoy, bait. Yeah.
For those.
They said that about
runners.
themselves.
yeah.
They must
Yeah.
be like endurance
Yeah.
runners or something like that.
Yeah.
Like triathletes.
One time I also got the word survivor, and I don't know what that means. Like, what does it mean?
That's just a catch-all. That's like a.
That's good. Yeah. I mean,
It's like I guess like when you call yourself
You do
like, a
whatever you
hustler
gotta
in a
do.
startup. It was
Okay.
like you don't have any specific skill, but you're gonna work at the very least.
when you say you're what?
Like a hustler in a startup.
Yeah.
All right.
Or an influencer.
Yeah, or a social media influencer. all you do is sell tea and whatever else they do. I don't remember.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so I will record this, and then you will be compared to all future sections and so on. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So just also want to talk about myself. So I think I said this. This is my 6th quarter section leading. And I know I sent you all a form, right? And I think only one person filled it out. 2.
Oh, I think I did
Yeah.
it just before.
Okay. Yeah. So that's totally fine. So so you're actually my 9th section. Sometimes I teach 2 sections. What I found out is that students don't like being told that something is required. So I have like a ton of stuff, forms and all, like to help you in this class. But since I found out through many iterations that students don't like being forced to do stuff, they're all optional. But I highly recommend doing them because like I've actually put a lot of thought into like pointing out what is important in what is important from lecture, what's not important from lecture. All right. So yeah, if you just quickly take a look at that, you can see some of the conceptual questions, and then you'll be able to see like why some of those are important. All right. So yeah, that is the general thing over there. Now I want to quickly talk about some quick policies. I was gonna print a syllabus, but my printer broke, so I'll send it to you, and then we can just quickly go over them right now. Okay. Here's our schedule. This is super optimistic, but I think we'll get through it. All right. Okay, so something about attendance and participation. So yes, attendance is mandatory, just like in 106A, 106AP, and so on. Ironically, we are being recorded, but you're not allowed. You have to be here to get like your attendance and participation. You can't say, "Oh, well, I'll just be at home and watch your video through SCPD later." So you all will have access to this video, but yeah, you have to come over here. I want to see you. It was at like 10:28 or something, and then I thought no one was gonna show up, and I was gonna teach to an empty lecture hall. So yes, I'm glad you showed up. Please do keep showing up. I know it's 10:30. Like I've never taught a section in the morning before, but this quarter I've decided to try to be a morning person. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice. You should all be on time. Okay? Cool. Yeah, you can, however, make up the section by going to another section. So there are like 60 sections.
Oh my god.
Yeah, probably 60. There's 60 section leaders, I think, for B. So you can attend any of those. There's a link which I can send you where you can essentially go see, you can essentially find which section you can make. The locations and time are all listed there. Okay? And then, yeah, and then feel free to also watch the SCPD. You can watch me on super high HD. Okay? All right, let's see. Yeah, also, some students ask me about like absences, about excused absences. The CS106B policy is that no, like all absences are unexcused. The only exception is at Stanford sponsored athletic events and OAE accommodations. For both of those, you have to email Kate, but there are no other like excused absences. Now you are allowed, I think, one absence. You have to talk with Marty about that, but I think you are allowed one. So if you have to miss because you're sick, because you have an interview, because you have to travel, because you have to go to a wedding or something, yeah, you have one free excused absence, okay? And you can always make it up within that same week. Yeah, let's see. Assignments. So how far along were we on the assignment? 0%.
Yeah.
Halfway?
pretty
Halfway?
Um,
More than 50%?
No, yeah, no.
Okay, fine. Have we finished part A and B?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, great. All right. So sounds good. So you still have 5 days to do it. Now there is an early bird deadline, which you definitely encourage you to do, but it's not like a huge deal. Yes.
Is that tomorrow? What time on
Uh-huh.
Fridays is the early bird deadline?
I don't
Is it
know.
midnight Friday or is it like
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a
lecture
good
time
question.
Friday?
Yeah. So you can. I'll double check. So
Probably says, I'm just
here,
kidding.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. Yeah.
Sheesh.
8 a.m.
That's
Yeah.
damn.
So the early bird is
Like,
here.
nah, I get it.
Friday,
Oh.
April 12th, 8 a.m. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What I encourage you to do is if you do make it by the deadline, then submit it. But then over the weekend, like double check, run your code, make sure there's nothing wrong with it. Because the worst thing that could happen is because you tried to submit it early, you kind of like missed a bunch of stuff in your program, and that early bird doesn't really help you because you missed a bunch of other stuff.
And
Okay,
so
question?
we check like so part C
Uh-huh.
would just be to run it, and then like they have like 3 different things I think or 4.
3 different like hotkeys, right? Like
Yeah,
the
so if
different
you do
input
all the
boxes, yeah.
hotkeys, then that should be good. Or
So that's a really good question because a big theme of this class is like, okay, you've written a program. How do you test it? How do you make sure
Yeah.
it works perfectly, right? Yeah. So the thing is, when we run your program, we're gonna run it on some input files that are not released to you.
oh,
All right. So part of your job is also you have to read the spec very carefully, look at what Marty and Julie specifically wrote on the spec. What are the requirements? And make sure that you handle all of these like weird cases. We call them like edge cases, where like even though the input file looks weird, but it technically is valid, and you have to handle it correctly. Okay. As a suggestion, you can look in the file. You'll see there's two texts called torture 1 and torture 2.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So those are really.
Those are like really
Messed up.
tough cases. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can also double check on Piazza. Maury will probably mention something about those, but those are good ones to test. Okay. Yeah. This theme of testing is going to come again and again, because you never actually know if your program works perfectly, right? You can test it on as many things as you can, but you can never know. You can never test everything. Right? So then part of this class is also trying to teach you, like, okay, what are some strategies I can do to try to like test each individual components of my program to make sure it works perfectly. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely start. Oh yeah. Part of this class is also I see a lot of students do this. Do not work all the way up till the deadline, and then you are finally be able to get it to work like at 7:55, and then you submit it. Right, because you should probably spend some time to test to make sure whether or not your program is right. So don't work all the way up to the deadline. All right, give yourself like a day or so as a buffer. Part of the reason why we have this early bird deadline is like the extra credit is not like huge, but the main point of the early bird is try to encourage you to get to start earlier. Even if you start earlier, even if you don't get the early bird deadline, you probably do better because you just started earlier and have more buffer time to test your programs. Okay. All right, and then as a continuing theme from 106A or AP or AJ, yeah, style is also graded in this class, and we're going to emphasize a lot of like style ideas in this class. I might talk about style at the end, but one thing I highly suggest you read is the decomposition handout. Okay, there's a have you seen the decomposition handout? It's the handout about BMI. Yeah, it talks about procedural decomposition. One thing that I often see students struggle in the first two assignments. On the first assignment, Marty just gives you a main method, right? Like he literally just gives you an empty main method and tells you to write the whole program, right? Yeah. So that's going to be true for assignment 2 as well. So oftentimes you have this huge problem and you're not given any starter code. You have to learn how to break that problem down into smaller problems, and you do that through like systematic procedural decomposition. Okay. Yes. Question.
In that same vein, I remember you in that decomp thing. They said in your main, it shouldn't have too much standalone code. I guess. Like, what is a good rule of thumb?
Yeah.
So, like, it should just mainly call module functions elsewhere, and then. But is there? Can you have like a for loop and stuff in there?
Yeah. So you can definitely have a for loop. You can have a while loop. For example, how I look at style, how I look at the composition is I look at your main method, and just looking at the main method, just looking at the function calls you make, just looking at the for loop you have, I should be able to tell what your strategy is to solving the problem.
Okay.
Okay. So if you just look at your main method, you can't look at anything else. If your main method doesn't make sense just by reading it, that's a problem. Okay. So look at the main method. Think to yourself, does that make sense? If it does, then you're good. Okay. Do the same thing for every other method. All right. Any other questions?
And is there a thing that on the website that has like style
Yes.
recommendations and such?
Yes. So definitely read this thing called the style guide. There's the style guide, and Marty is really comprehensive. He lists every single thing about the style guide. Yeah. One quarter, in fact, I think in my paperless comments, I basically put citations to the style guide. Like I literally just cited the style guide. Some students were like, "Oh, that was never a rule. You never told me that." So then I would like cite the style guide. Okay. So yeah, read the style guide. Treat this as yeah, this is important. Okay. So style is more about just commenting and indentation and what else? Variable naming. Style is also, did you express your logic in the most simplest way possible? Did you decompose properly? Did you use... And also, one thing to follow, I highly suggest you look at, is under each assignment, you'll see this. You'll see a huge section about style details. So literally, just read through everything, make sure you do everything properly. Okay? Any questions? All right, awesome. Let's see. Late days. You have 4 late days, which that is twice the number of late days from as last quarter. So, yay, you get 4 late days. You can use up to 2 per assignment. They're lecture days. That means if you do use a lecture day over Memorial Day, you get like an extra. you get like an extra day or so. Okay, because Memorial Day is on Monday. So if there's an assignment due on Friday and you turn it in late, it's due Wednesday because that's the next lecture.
That'll be one late day.
Yes.
That's it too.
Yes. Now, not that I recommend you do that, because do you seriously want to be doing work on Memorial Day? Okay, well, I guess it doesn't matter, but yeah. Not that I'm recommending that, but that is an option. Okay. Let's see. Pair programming. Is anyone here planning to work in a pair? Okay. Cool. Yeah. So if you are looking for a partner, let me know, and I'll try to pair you up. You're not. I neither recommend nor discourage you from working in a pair. There's pros and cons to both, and if you like working in a pair, go for it. All right. IGs, yeah. So IGs are required. Happens after every assignment, except the last. I'll send you the signups. In paperless, they have this new like sign up thing that is way better than the previous one. So I'm excited to try it out. Yeah. Okay. For the first couple assignments, I'll try to return your assignments like within 2 to 3 days, sometimes even 1 day. But and then later assignments they'll be more like 4 to 5 days. Okay. Cool. All right. Also, so most SLs don't have this, but I'll have these like section only office hours. They're in addition to Lair. All right. So you all know about Lair. Lair is in the Tressiter. You can get help on your assignment if you need to. And then I'll also have these separate like office hours. They're going to be varies depending on the week. Depends on when you want the office hour, but something I've done in the past is the assignment was due on Friday, and my office hours were Friday at 12 a.m. Yeah, yeah, because I assume most of you are probably up at that time trying to finish the work, so might as well do that. Yeah, so that was what I did last quarter, and it was a blast. We basically stayed at TAP until like 3, but yeah. So if you yeah, we have a small section as well, so that would be great. I'll send a survey. We can see when you want office hours to be. I know some of you are aiming for the early deadline versus the late deadline, so we can decide when that would be best. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. There's more information. I'll send it on the section handout. Okay. And just a note to the SCPD folks. Some of these policies don't apply to you, so please read the SCPD handout that is on the course website. Okay. All right. By the way, should I talk about this shirt?
Yeah. Also, where do you get one?
Yeah. So this is the section leader T-shirt for last year. Essentially, someone made an extension, which is like a Carol City, and then I think we decided to do something similar, so it's a Rainbow Carol. All right. Yeah. I don't know. I think someone initially just started it off as a joke, like, oh, here's a random T-shirt design, against the other like more serious T-shirt designs, but we voted for this one. So there were tank tops and T-shirts. Tank tops seemed a little extreme for this, so I decided to get the T-shirt. All right, but yeah, so that's the story of this T-shirt.
Do we have any Carol assignments?
We don't have any Carol assignments, unfortunately. Yeah. Carol is behind us. Yeah, 106A is also not being offered, at least for now. So yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. We were gonna create another T-shirt, which is like
Rest in peace.
yes, rest in peace, Carol. Yeah. So yeah. All right. Cool. You're excited about the class?
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
But...
All right. Yeah. So yeah. Let's get started. So today we're gonna mostly just talk about C++, talk about strings. I'm gonna do like a trace problem. So there are 2 kinds of problems you'll probably see on exams. One is called a trace problem, which is essentially, here's a bunch of code, figure out what it prints, okay? And then the other kind of problem is like a coding problem, so where you actually have to write code. Now, obviously a coding problem is like a little bit more involved because you actually have to come up with the code. But trace problems, why I want to talk a little bit about trace problems is because sometimes there are like a couple strategies you can do to make it easier to trace. But like it's definitely not like necessarily the first thing you might come up with when you're trying to do a trace problem, okay? Like I personally, when I took the class, I didn't do well on trace problems because I never understood like how to organize the trace problem. So I'm going to teach you like some strategies as to how do you write out a trace problem so that you can do it systematically without going into any troubles, okay? So let's look at question 1. All right, let's look at question 1. So this is like a typical trace question where...
Can I get a sheet?
Oh, yes, definitely. let me just review your names. So, Joel, David, Jessica, Eric, and Sander.
Yes.
All right, cool. So, okay, since I have such a small section, I'm gonna make sure I get everyone's names down the first time. All right, let's get started. So, let's do this trace problem. So, oftentimes in this trace problems, you'll get these really confusing variable names. Okay, so for example, here, if you look at the 5 string variables they give you, you have a variable named major, and the string inside that variable is Fred, right? But then you have another variable called Fred, but the string inside is computer. Okay. The important thing to note is the variable name itself is not the string inside. Okay. So let's just quickly trace through this question. Whoa, that's cool. All right, and then I'll also put the handout on here just so we can reference this. Okay, so one thing I really like to do when I do these problems is to create like this like memory diagram. I'm essentially going to draw boxes for each of the variables, and that will let us to more easily determine, oh, am I passing it by reference or am I passing it by value? Right. Notice up here, in the function sentence, notice that some of these parameters have these ampersands. Remember what these ampersands do?
Reference parameter.
Yeah. Yeah. So how's a reference different from just a normal parameter? Yes.
So normal parameter, if you send it in, it would be modified. If it's modified in that function, it will only be modified within the function. Once you leave it and go back to the main or the function that called it, that parameter won't be updated.
Yeah.
It'll remain whatever it was in this main function. But if you pass it as a reference parameter, if it's updated within the sentence function, let's say, then it will also update the parameter in the main function.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. Another way to think about it is when you are passing it by value, which is without the ampersand, it doesn't update because we create an actual copy of the variable when we give it to the function. Okay, but when you pass it by reference, you're actually giving the variable itself into the function. So that will be really obvious when I draw it out. Okay, so let's see. We're gonna create 5 strings. Okay, so we're gonna create a string called major. Can someone read me what the names of the strings are?
We have string major with the value Fred.
Fred, okay.
String Fred with the value computer.
Okay.
String computer with the value department.
Okay.
String department value student.
Okay.
And string student value major.
Okay. Student. Okay. Super important. Don't get these mixed up with these. All right. Cool. Okay. So let's see. So what's the first thing we do? We call sentence, and what do we pass as the 3 parameters? So we're gonna call sentence, and what do we pass as the 3 parameters? Okay, so we pass major, Fred, and department, right? We pass major, Fred, and department. Okay, now we pass major as the first parameter, right? So inside this function, what variable is created? What variable is created over here? Inside sentence.
Box for major.
Yeah, we have a box for major, right? That's just the parameter over there, major. And what is being passed inside? We're passing in this variable, right?
Fred.
We're passing in Fred. Right? We're going to have a variable in here called major, and that variable contains this thing. Right? One thing to note, we're passing it by reference, right? Because we pass it by reference, we don't actually create a copy of this variable. We're actually just going to create like this reference to it. So I'm just going to call it a major. I'm just going to say this thing refers to this one. Okay? Later, when we actually change major, you have to alter this one. Now, this is different for the second parameter. The second parameter is Fred, right? So what do we pass in as Fred?
Computer.
Computer, okay, so let's see. We're going to create a variable here called Fred, and then we're going to pass in computer. Okay. Notice here the difference is that for major, because we passed it by reference, we don't create a separate copy of it. We're essentially just going to say, oh, whenever I say major, you're actually going to change this variable over here. Whenever I say Fred, I'm not going to change this variable. I'm going to change this copy I created because I passed it by value. Does that make sense? Yeah. By writing it this way, you will not it prevents you from confusing yourself. Oftentimes, because you have, especially because these are just really confusing because the variable names and the strings are the same. So by drawing the diagram explicitly, you won't confuse yourself. All right. And then what's the last one? Foo, and we pass it in. What do we pass in for foo? A reference to department, right? So foo, we pass in a reference to department. Okay. Now, so what would be C outed here? What would be C outed?
Many a student.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, my bad. This is the handout and that different?
It's just foo is binky.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, okay, so just a note to SCPD, the handout is a little bit different from code step by step. The handout names this binky. Okay, but I think the problem's still identical.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see, C out. Many a, and what's being printed? Student, right? Because we're gonna print binky, which is a reference to student. So we're gonna print student, many a student in the computer, because we're saying Fred, which refers to computer, of what major? Fred, right. Okay? Yeah, super confusing because when we print major, you actually print Fred. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what happens in the next two lines? Major, major bracket 0 equals x. What does that mean?
So since major is reference parameter, it changes the string major in the main function.
Right. So, yeah. So when you actually change this one, you're actually referring to this string, right?
Right.
And then what does bracket 0 equals x do?
So it changes the character in index 0. So instead of Fred, it would be like X RED.
Okay. Yes. Perfect. Right. So because major is a reference to this variable over here, any change you make to major is actually changing this variable itself. So you're actually going to get x RED. All right. What about the second one? Foo 1 is equal to z, or binky.
So in this case, you actually change student to SZ student.
Right. So S student. All right. Yeah. Awesome. So one thing just to note, this problem didn't test this, but if you were to change computer, or if you were to change the variable Fred, you would be changing this variable, not this one. Okay. All right. Now the function is done. What happens when the function is done? What happens to our diagram over here? Yeah.
At least on the right side, right?
Yes. So this part is done. If you took 106A with Chris Peach, he talks about the variable love story, and this side dies. So everything over here, because it went out of scope, everything here is gone. All right. But everything here stays. Okay. I'm gonna just run through one more iteration of this because just want to make sure we get the last part. So let's just quickly run through one more iteration. Okay. So sentence, we're gonna pass in student. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna have three variables. The first variable in our sentence function is called major. What should the variable major do? What should the variable major be referring to? Or
It's a reference to student to the student variable which has variable which is major.
yeah, exactly, because we're passing in student into as the first parameter, and the first parameter in our new function is named major. So let's see, student, and we have major. This references the student variable, which somehow has major in it. Okay. What's the second parameter?
Fred. So that references the parameter department, which is our S student.
Okay. Does that reference it?
Oh no, it just whatever
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
calls it.
Yeah. It just passes it by value.
It passed.
Pass by value. Essentially, we just create a copy of it. So Fred, we're gonna copy this thing into student.
So how much more inefficient is it to pass by value?
Yeah. So when you pass by value, yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, how much more inefficient is it to pass by value? So passing by value is what it does is it creates a full copy of whatever you're passing in. Now for like small things like ints, for very small strings, these strings are tiny. For characters, that cost is not big, right? For primitive types, you're not copying too much. But if you were to copy like a vector, that would be huge. Like vectors could be in the size of thousands of elements. So unless you really need to create a separate copy, for some reason you actually needed a full copy. Otherwise, you always pass it by reference. Okay. A good chart I like to draw is let's see, do I have some board space? I'll quickly draw a chart over here, which is when to pass each by which. So, all right. So the question is primitives, collections. Okay. Now there are two cases. Suppose we do want to modify. Want to modify. Do not want to modify. Okay. Now for primitives, if we want to pass it in and we do want to modify it, so if we do want to modify and have the change persist in the other function, how should we pass it in?
When we do want to modify it, we want to use a reference.
Yes, a reference, right? So when you do want to modify, you do want to use a reference because that's the only way you get the change to persist. How about a collection, an ADT, a vector?
Yes.
Always by reference.
Also by reference, right? Okay. What if you don't want to modify it?
Copy.
So yeah, so if we pass a primitive but you don't want to modify it.
By value.
By value, yeah. So you by value, yeah. Because the cost of passing in a primitive by value is not really big. But there's no like concern like there's more of a concern about if we accidentally change this value if we pass it by reference. Okay? Now, this is interesting. What if we pass a collection but we don't want to modify it?
Also by reference.
Yeah, so we definitely want to pass it by reference because we don't want to copy it. Now, Marty, I think he'll cover this maybe on Friday. Okay, but there's this thing you can do where you can add the word const in front of your parameter, and what that does is it tells whoever is writing the method, hey, you can't, even though I'm giving this to you by reference, you can't actually change it. Okay, so it's basically the best of both worlds, right? You are passing it by reference, so you don't let them, so you don't create a copy. But then you also pass it by const reference because now, even though I'm passing the exact ADT into my function, I don't let whoever is using it change it. Okay?
So it still updates it while you're going through. It's just when you leave it, it just goes back
Yeah.
to.
Mhm.
It just does it. It just reverses it.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the question is, does this mean you can still change it, but then it just reverses back? The answer is no. When you pass it by const reference, you're essentially just telling them you cannot ever change this. Okay? Because one also concern you might have when you pass it in by reference is sometimes when you change it, you fundamentally just destroy it. So there's no real way to like revert it back unless you actually pass it by a copy. Okay? There are a very limited number of cases where you want to actually pass it by value, which creates a separate copy. Right? One, can anyone think of an example of when you might pass it by value? Yes.
For the collections, right?
Yeah, for collections, yeah.
For example, let's say you want to do like a square root or elements in a vector, and then you just want to return something else, but you don't want to modify the elements.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah, because you're gonna go through all the elements anyways, right? So, yeah, so you can definitely do that. Another really common used example is if you want to pass in a stack. Because a stack you can't remember stacks from Wednesday, right? If you pass in a stack, you can't access all the elements immediately. So sometimes to get all the elements in the stack, you have to like pop them
go
up one
through
by
every
one.
single.
Yeah.
Pop them out.
But once you pop them out one by one, it kind of destroys the stack. So suppose you wanted to write a function called print stack, then you'd want to pass in you want to pass it by value because you want to give it a copy, so that when it destroys the stack, it doesn't change the stack you passed it in. Okay, does that make sense?
But if you're
Question,
not going to
yes.
modify it, though, what's the point of passing it as a reference?
If you don't want to modify it,
Yeah.
yeah. So we always want to pass collection by some sort of reference because collections potentially could be very huge, right? In the next assignment, assignment 2, you'll be dealing with, you'll essentially put an entire dictionary, which has tens of thousands of words, into some sort of collection. Yeah, and then this is really interesting. If you don't pass it by reference, the program won't finish. Yeah, like you can actually see, like one of the biggest bugs you'll get is, oh, everything is right, it just hangs there. And the reason is because it's too slow, because you create a copy every time the function is called, right? Imagine you call like a function 10,000 times, then it creates 10,000 copies, which is just unimaginably slow, okay? So we always prefer to pass collections by reference, unless you have a really, really good reason as to making a copy. Right, any other questions? All right, we have 6 minutes. We can do this. We can do one more problem.
I just had one question
Sure.
about.
Mhm.
So I think is her name Julie? Yeah.
Julie, yes.
Julie. Yeah. Julie. So Julie was talking yesterday about like grids.
Grids.
And isn't she said grids is like multi-dimensional vectors kind of, but isn't it more like multi-dimensional arrays? Just it's besides the scope.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good question. So a grid is vectors and grids are a little bit different in that for grids, if you like keep adding elements, like the grid doesn't expand by itself, right? Like for a vector, you can just keep adding elements to it, and then like it can grow as big as you want it to. But for a grid, you have to specify a size, and then even if you add more elements to it, it doesn't just expand on its own, right? Yeah. So you are correct in that. They are a little bit different in that grids just don't expand by themselves, kind of like arrays. But the nice thing about a grid is there's a function you can call called resize, which will do all the resizing for you. Okay? Now, in our last 5 minutes, see, I told you this is highly optimistic. Let's just do this quick question, okay? So I'm just going to quickly tell you what the question is. Essentially, you're given a string. Figure out if the string is, if the parentheses and brackets are balanced. Okay? Now, these are huge examples, so I want to give like a smaller example, which will probably make more sense. So suppose I have all the code inside, like the if and all the characters. They don't matter. The only ones that matter are the parentheses. So suppose you had the string open brace, close brace, close brace. Is this balanced? Right? Because the key idea is every time you see a brace, there must be like the same braces in reverse order. Okay? So this is balanced. If it is balanced, what you do is you return -1. Now, what if you get something like this? Is this balanced? Right? Because there are two types of braces, but as long as you see the same in like reverse order, then it is balanced. All right. Another issue. What
is the function between the two types of braces?
What? Sorry.
Is there any difference in like the roles of the two types of braces?
The only difference is that if you have something like this, would this be okay? Yeah. So the only function is that there are different types of braces. So when you want to close the braces, you have to close it in the same order, right? So here you'd have to say like, oh, need to have this brace before this one. So this is out of order. Okay. What the function wants you to do is if you see anything like this, you return the index of where there was a violation, where there was an error. So the index here would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You would just return 4. Okay. Does that make sense?
3, right? In this case.
Oh, not 4, 3. 3, right? Because the first violation you get is this one. Okay, now as one final example, what if you get something like this? Is this balanced? No. Because why?
Because there's no closed normal parentheses.
Yeah, one final thing you have to worry about is at the very end, you have to make sure you close everything. So if that happens, what you do is you print the size, or you just print the index after the last one. That's just the size of the string. Okay? That would be fine. All right. Just looking at these examples, how could you tackle this?
With stack.
Yeah, a stack. So why a stack?
Because you basically pile on top of each other, you can only take out the top one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you open something, then you need to either open something new and close that new thing, or you need to close it.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, like, if you think about a stack, you're essentially getting, if you put elements in there, you get the elements in reverse order, right? You only get the previously added one at the very top. So at every point, we only care about if the closed brace matches with the immediate previous open brace, right? So using a stack, this kind of models a stack in that when you put stuff in there, you can now pop them back up to see if it matches. Okay? Just as a quick run, suppose we use the stack over here, right? What would you do for the first one?
Add it.
Okay, so we like push it. So stack, front, back. Okay, so suppose we or bottom. Suppose we push this one. So we pushed it into the stack, and then this one, push. Okay. And then what would you do for this one? So when you see a closing brace, we want to check. Okay, so this is closing some open brace, right? Which is what open brace is it closing? Well, you can just look at the very top one.
So just pop the top value.
Yeah, so the syntax is pop. If you pop the top value, you'll get this one. And then what can you do with that one? You can just check if it closes this one, right? Okay, what happens when we reach this one?
You'll pop the bottom one.
Yeah, and then you can see, oh, this one matches with that one, so we're good.
In terms of like how you'd actually structure that syntactically, would you be wanting to peek at it first and then pop, or would you be popping it and then checking to see, like using a boolean and then confirming and then putting it back? Like how does what would be more efficient?
Sure. Let's try coding it right now.
Okay.
And then we can see, yeah, we can do it in, let's do 1 minute, all right? So,
You can code it in 1 minute.
yes, of course I can, okay? So check
I
balance,
cannot.
string code, okay? So, all right. So, what was our first step before we did all of this?
Create a stack.
We need a stack, right? So let's create a stack. Also, usually I write pseudocode, but towards the end I usually run out of time, so let's call that parens. All right, and then what do you do with the stack?
We push the open brackets.
Right, we want to push the open brackets. How do you like get each
Oh,
of
you
these?
have the loop over it.
You have to loop through each character to find.
Yeah, exactly.
to
So,
see for the different types of brackets.
how do you loop through a string?
Be like for I equals 0, I is less than the length of the string.
Okay, so that would be code
Size.
that size, yeah.
Yeah. I plus plus.
Okay, so this goes through each everything in the string.
Uh-huh.
Okay, how do you access a character in the string?
It's code in the brackets.
Yeah, code bracket. This gives you the actual character itself. Okay, now what do we do with the character? So suppose we were at this one.
If code at index I is equal to open parentheses or open curly brace, there's gotta be like a technical name for those. Open curly brace, then push it into the stack.
Okay, exactly. One thing to note is that notice that we're using. Why do we use the single quotes instead of the double quotes?
It's a character.
Yeah, because when you do an index of a string, it gives you a character. Okay, so if that's the case, then you put parens dot
Push.
push. Yeah, so you push the character itself. Okay. All right. What other cases do we have to care about?
If it's a closed one.
Okay. So else if it's a closed one, so let's handle this one. So if it's a closed one, then
Check whether the pop one, like check whether pop equals the open one.
okay, sure. So how would you code that?
So peak or code I dot peak. Or if
Parens, right?
yeah, parens. Yeah.
Okay. And then what do you do with this parens? What do you do with this peak? So peak, it gives you back a character.
If you want to see if that's equal to the
Open
open one.
braces.
Open.
So that's equal
curly.
to open curly. Then, if it is,
You're gonna pop.
yeah. So then we can just like pop.
So why not pop directly?
Yeah. So so that's a good point.
Well, I guess you could pop directly, and then if it
Just
wasn't,
back, I guess.
then you
push back.
push because it goes right back.
So we can literally just pop it because it gives you the item as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So it both examines and also takes off the value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So if it is equal to the open brace, then
Great.
Then we already popped it, right?
so we're great, right? Okay. What if it's not?
Push.
Push it back.
Push it back. Okay.
Oh no. Then I guess you would just exit. You would return the I.
Right, because in this case, if we get this one, but it doesn't match this one,
Yeah.
we don't have to continue, right?
Yeah, it's already
Yeah,
messed
Yeah.
up.
So what would you return?
-1.
No.
Or sorry, not
you
-1.
return
The
I.
value.
Yeah, the current index we're at, which is just I. Okay. So just as a quick example, this is bad style. Why is this bad style?
Jeez.
Yeah. Make sure your if you don't have an empty if statement. Okay, because you can just restructure this as if it's not equal to that, then you return I, and then just remove the else. Make sense?
Pretty.
All right. And then we can do something similar down here. Else if code I is equal to. Ooh, I'm really out of time. If parens not pop not equal to that brace, then return I. Okay. Are we done?
Nope.
What are we missing?
At the end, we need to check whether the stack is empty.
Okay, so if parens dot is empty, then
Return -1.
okay, so return -1. Else
Return I+1.
return. So remember, we can't access I because that's like not in scope. Yeah, but we can. We just want to return the size, right? So code dot size. Okay. Does this work? Okay. I think there's one small bug in it. Okay, but here's something nice about code step by step. You can run it.
Wow.
Yikes. Oh. Okay, so there's one small issue here. It says error attempting to pop an empty stack. Why might that be?
There's nothing in the stack.
Yeah, it's possible that here when we pop, there's nothing in the stack, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. The case could be, what if we had something like open, close, and then another close, right?
Yeah.
Here we have nothing in our stack, so we can't pop it.
Okay.
What should you do in that case?
We could just make one particular case exception for if oh god, what am I trying to say? If the stack is not full, or sorry, is not empty, then you can execute that.
Okay. So if it is empty.
Yeah, if it is empty,
Mhm.
then you can
You
execute.
do that.
Otherwise,
Or if parens pop, is that or
Yeah.
or it's empty, then you return
So that
I.
is empty, or that, and then parens that is empty. So right before we pop it, we also check if it's empty. If it is empty, then we just return I. Okay. Now, quick question: why do we put this expression before instead of after?
Because you would get the same exact error.
Yeah.
If you put the parens pop and try to pop something empty.
Yeah, that's a good point. We
Never
can't.
hit the empty one.
Yeah, we can't put this after. We can't do this. This would be bad. And the reason why we can't do that is because this is the same concept of short circuiting, where in an or statement, if something is like, if something values to false, and something values to true, and then there's an or statement, it skips the second one.
Yeah.
Right. So then you prevent yourself from popping the empty one. Let's run it, and you always love that sound. Okay. This also shows how important it is to test your programs. Okay, because sometimes you're not given these test cases for your assignments. So you have to come up with your own test cases to make sure you catch all of these small bugs. Okay, you can see these are like a bunch of like small edge cases, like stuff you don't really think about, but it technically is valid. Then you have to like make sure all of these work. Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah. Thanks for coming to section. And thanks to the SCPD students here. And let's answer one more question. Yes.
Question. So we have 6 of these,
Mhm.
and they're all on. We can all access this online.
Yes.
Practice.
Here. So if you go to section, you will see the list of sections.
And are there solutions posted?
That's a very good question, and so there will be solutions posted, but I also get solutions over here.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. So I always forget to pass solutions, so you have to remind me.
okay.
Okay. Yep. There are solutions, and then let's see. Yeah, I highly suggest try the other problems. Remember. Tonight. I mean, or if you don't care, you wouldn't come anyways. That's fine too. I mean, it'll usually be held at tap, and I'll just be eating mozzarella sticks. So, and you can have some too. But I'll just be sitting there. If no one comes, fine.